guys, this little tutorial is going to walk through how we use our joints to be able to build relationships between our parts, well actually our components, when we're building in Fusion 360. So what you should have is downloaded your set of basically components that have already been put into one project. So you can see we've got each of the parts in here. Now each of these is set up as an individual component. Most of the things we've created so far, we've just created as an individual part, or that just has bodies. Now what we've created here is actually allows us to build relationships and things more complex because we've created components instead of just making bodies. So this is something that we're going to be doing much more often, and most of the time you create something that has more than one part, you're going to be using components because it gives us a whole lot of features and value in how we work with it. Because each component can have its own timeline, and that can be a really handy thing when we're building stuff up. So if we have a look, each of these parts are free and moving around. They've all been built. You don't have to worry about building them, but now we need to create the relationships between them to be able to get them looking like this car. So where we go to do that is over in this assemble section, and we're going to be working with joints. Now the crucial thing anytime with working with joints is we have one part of them grounded. So one is set, that's locked, that doesn't move around. And in this case, if we look at our car, this base piece is probably the piece that we want to be worrying about. So if we have a look and I double click on him, it shows us that flat brick there. So what I want to be able to do is I'm going to mate that. We could right click on it and ground it. But in this case, what we want to be able to do is I'm going to use a joint to be able to mate him to the origin. So I'm going to turn the origin back on, and that gives us a really nice place to be able to sort of merge and sort of work from. So I'm going to go down to Ensemble and Joint, and what you'll notice is when we go into joints, it basically wants to use one part, like one instance to be able to attach it. So I'm going to be using this one here. So notice if I go on the face, we've got those X, Y, Z little arrows. So this one I can see the red's coming out and the green's going down. If I select that, I come back over to my origin, and I want to be able to sort of set it up the same way. So you can see the green's going up, so it's going to sort of link in there. So if I click that, it keeps it the same, pointing in the same direction, and we've got that. If I wanted to, I can go in and sort of jig the spacing from where that point is attached. I can rotate it, and there's a few other things I can do, but that's our basic one there. So he's now fixed. I'm going to turn the view of my origin off, and I can start building up from there. So if I start looking at my car next, I'm going to get the easy stuff done first. So I'm going to put the front, the back. We need to do a little bit of a sub-assembly for the wheel, and then we're going to do the chassis and the wheels after that. So I'm going to start by putting this guy on. So the easiest is probably that center one again. Again, this is something that you want to be able to play with and start exploring a little bit. But I'm going to joint it in there. I'm going to go, okay, I'm happy with that space. The back one, again, I'm going to go, shortcut is J. I'm going to come around to the back, select that back one, bring that there, and add it there. So again, that looks good. What I'm going to do for the next one is I need to be able to get this guy, I'm going to link him in. I could do with the back of this one and sort of line it up with the back there and sort of line them up there. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to use the side here. So I'm going to go J, and I'm going to grab the side of him and the side of him, which then rotates through. But at the moment you can see that's not quite where I want it to be. So I'm going to pull it this way 2 millimeters. That's now lined up, and I'm going to go okay. So now that's in place. That's awesome. The wheel now, we're going to do something other than a rigid joint. So what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to find the front spot there, and I'm going to go with the front spot there. So now that's put in place, that's good, but I can go to motion now and choose the type. So I can choose, in this case, I think revolute is going to be nice. So we can see what it looks like. We could limit the movement if we needed to, but at the moment that is perfect. So I'm going to go OK on that. So now that can move within the assembly now that I need it. Now the next thing I'm going to do with these two is I'm actually going to group those together. So I'm going to create a new component and make almost like a sub-assembly or subgroup. And I'm going to call this steering column. Okay, so now I've created that. Notice the dot has come down here. I've activated that component, and each component has its own little timeline. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to grab the steering column and drop it in there. And notice now that's in the activated one, everything else is not. So it makes it really nice to be able to sort of just focus on elements as we're going, and the steering wheel wants to go in there as well. And I'm going to go capture position in this case because that's where I want them to be. So now that's a subsection that's ready to go, and I'm going to move back out so I can go to the next one. So I can click on that little dot and now I'm back in the whole part. Notice the steering column has a different icon now to say basically it's a group of components. All right, so the next thing I have now is I'm missing a few wheels. If I have a look, I need 2 of these chassis and 4 wheels. But instead of just creating those now, what I'm going to do is build up a basically wheelbase where I'm going to create a second wheel. But before I do that, I'm going to make a component group for the wheels themselves. So the rim and the tyre need to go together. So I'm going to go create a new component. I'm just going to call this wheel. And within that wheel, I'm going to pull the rim. And just go capture, that's fine. And I'm going to grab, where do you go? The tyre. So those two are now activated. I'm going to hit my J to go to construct. And I'm going to use that end face and there to be able to go through. So this time I actually don't want it to revolve. I want them to be rigid. So when the inside rim moves, the tyre and the outside does as well. So that's now good. I'm going to come back out of here because what I want to do next is I'm going to make 2 of those. I'm going to go Control CV. It doesn't matter where they are in this case. And I'm going to move that guy. So, okay, so now what I should have is 2 wheels there. Now I'm going to add these to a new component. So I'm going to go again, create new component. And this one is going to, I'm going to call it our wheelbase. Okay, so this guy is going to have both those wheels. Wheels go in there, and I want the chassis. So you'll notice that within that I can actually have subgroups in subgroups of components, which is quite cool. So now I'm going to go in and create my joint. So I'm going to grab, in this case I need to go onto the inside, select that inside face of that, and go onto the outside edge of that one. So he goes there, that's gone the right way, so I get the rim facing the right way, and in orientation, I'm going to change that to being revolute so my wheels can spin, and I'm going to go OK. So now that one's there, I'm going to repeat that with the other side. So I need this side, I want to go into that end face, so see it locks into the front, which is the center part, which is great. I go down and choose the outside face of him. And it's put it on the right way. If I need to flip it, so I can always flip it so it goes the other way. In this case, the first one was correct. So he's there, he's on revolute, that's perfect, and I'm going to go OK. So now my chassis is ready. What I can do is I'm going to come back out of here, and I can actually make a copy of that. So I'm going to go Control CV, grab a second one. Oh, not just the chassis. I need the whole wheelbase. So select him, copy that, and now I have a second assembly there. I can mate those in place now, and then I'm almost ready to go. So I'm going to go joint again. I'm going to choose that edge there and go to the edge there. That brings that up. I don't want it to revolute, so I'm going to go back to rigid, and he's good there. Okay, so that is now in place. What you will notice with mine is I actually have the right dimensions on there at the moment. What I did to you guys was I accidentally left it wrong. So what you'll notice, the dimensions for mine, there's a 9 here, yours is actually an 8. What that means is when you look at it, you've got some crossover here. So to fix that up, because of the way that it was made correctly, I can go into any of my chassis. I can either right click and edit that sketch, or just double click on that little face there. I'm going to go into him. What you notice about this sketch is it's fully defined. So that was, you can tell that by that little lock on the sketch. Now, if I was really clever, I would have named that a little bit better, but that's now here. You can see every line is black, it's all locked in. So you're going to change that dimension out 1 mil, which stretches that out. Everything else is in place and locked in, which is really, really good. So when you finish that, you'll notice that the chassis at the bottom is now the correct shape and correct size. So that's a really handy thing to be able to go back in and edit parts as we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mate or joint this guy in. I'm going to choose that back edge, so that top center, middle center. He's now locked in place, and that's ready to go. So if I want to, I can spin those wheels, and he's ready to go. So the next thing I'd like you to have a go at is try and do a quick drawing, front view, top view, side view with this guy as well.